Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I am trying something new today. So, I am recording a new podcast episode and I'm recording this on video as well so that I can upload the video to my Instagram, to YouTube maybe. And so, I'm excited for this. Let's dive right in. So, today's share is a very personal one. If you've been listening to the podcast, I've done episodes where I've talked about my inner child healing, and that was a big focus for me this year. And part of that has been to dive into some stuff with my grandma. So she passed away in 2007. She had cancer for like 10 years, I think. And she was very much my person. So she was very special to me. It was a really hard thing for me to lose her. Number one, actually, to watch her go through all of that pain and all of those different things. And then to lose her, to have her pass away. And so this is something that I have felt for a really long time that I never really like kind of fully not moved on from, but fully felt and really had that grief and I guess moved on from would be kind of the right term, but not moved on from in a way of forgetting all about her, right? Just being able to work through all of those emotions and to let those heavy things go. So, I have not spent a lot of time really intentionally diving into all of this. It has been just a lot of, here and there type things where emotions or things will rise to the surface. But I never really knew kind of how to deal with that or how to navigate this or how to really actually dive in to let go of some of this, pain and this hurt and this heaviness. And yeah, so let me just dive into kind of how this came about, what I'm going to talk about today, and let me share a little bit about kind of my history or my story with her. So, my parents had me when they were quite young. So, my maternal grandparents, specifically my grandma, from what I have kind of been told and what I kind of vaguely remember, had a big hand in taking care of me and helping, my parents out when I was younger. And throughout my childhood, some of my fondest memories are of being out on their farm, spending time out there with them, lots of sleepovers, lots of time outside, and different things like that. And so now, in my present life, now that we have moved out to the farm, my partner and my son and I have had many, many moments where I have felt like I've come full circle almost from that time in my life being a child and so carefree and just the energy and the vibration of being on the farm, and to now where I've kind of, gone through life being separate from such an innate, important part of myself. And I've kind of come back around to that aspect of me. So that's really exciting. So, spent a lot of time with my grandparents when I was a kid, with my cousins, and then, with my sister, and it was just a big part of my life. And so, if you listened to one of the previous episodes I did, I don't remember what the title of it is, but I went in and did a live meditation where I went into a specific memory that had to do with my grandma, where there was a lot of what I would almost call trauma, emotional trauma, that was in connection with that and that memory and that experience that released during that meditation and during that episode that I recorded. And that was a big, huge emotional release for me. Um, but it wasn't quite, didn't quite get me there, if that makes sense. And what I mean by that is I've still felt that there have been things to release, things to kind of work on in terms of my relationship with her, and just some energies, some lingering things that have been within me that I just haven't been able to kind of, flush out or tap into or whatever. And so, what I actually really want to dive into and share today is the meditation that came through last night. So, I didn't meditate during the day yesterday. And so, before bed, we were kind of just watching Netflix, my partner and I made the comment of, oh, I didn't meditate today. And I feel just kind of like off. I don't feel very great now. And not that I meditate every day, but, sometimes I just get that ping, or I just feel that pull. Okay, it's time to meditate. So, my guides or my angels or whatever, just, hey, you need to sit down and meditate. And so I put some music on. My partner rolled over and he was kind of falling asleep beside me. And I was kind of trying, quote unquote, to get into a meditation, or to just relax and kind of, let things flow. And I was having a little bit of a struggle. I was having some visions coming through, and some shifts happening. But, not a lot kind of happened. But I felt nice and relaxed. I felt some energy kind of moving around. And so I took my headphones off and I rolled over to go to sleep, and I was kind of just having trouble sleeping. And earlier in the evening, I had been talking with my sister about our grandma. And so maybe that's what prompted this quantum shift. I don't know. But either way, as I was kind of trying to lay there and fall asleep, I had a vision come through, or a scene play out. And this was a big timeline shift, a really profound shift for me. So, as I mentioned, grandma had cancer for 10 years. She had countless surgeries. She was, sick from chemotherapy. And for me, it was really hard being so close to her, to watch her go through those things, and to see her, have no energy, and to hear her in the bathroom being sick, and seeing her after surgery, and all of these different things. It was a struggle. It was really painful for me. And I think that for a long time I've downplayed how painful it was, and I never really actually acknowledged how much I struggled with that. And, whether it's maybe I felt like I didn't have a right to feel like that because I'm not, her kid, or whatever. In linear terms, I wasn't as close to her as, my mom was, for example. But, her and her have other entanglements, and just a lot of different things. And so, last night I think was actually the first time maybe not the first time, but one of the first times I've actually been able to shift this in a big way, these pains and these hurts. And something that has always been sitting within me is towards the end of her life. I don't remember linear time, so maybe in the last weeks, maybe days, weeks, a month, 2 months, I don't really remember, was seeing her in such bad shape right towards the end, where she couldn't move on her own. She couldn't talk. Her breathing was very labored, especially right towards the end. And, there was a day where, so I had been in university that previous year leading up to her passing away. And she passed away in April. I found out in maybe February or March that I was pregnant. So I was pregnant at this time that she passed away. So hormones and emotions are even higher. And anyway, there was a day where I was in the hospital room with her, and my mom was there, and we were standing beside her hospital bed talking with her. And there was other people in the room, I think, and that's how it was towards the end, is there was always a minimum of one or two people in the room with her. And, mom was standing beside me, and we were kind of talking to Grandma, and Mom had told Grandma that I was pregnant. And I don't know if I'll ever forget this. Maybe now it will kind of fade away a little bit because I've had this shift now, but this has always been so vivid in my mind, is that when Mom told her that, Grandma looked at me and it was just like this. She couldn't talk. So it was this like significant look, and there was just so much behind it. And, it was just her. I could just feel it. Even back then, when I wasn't awakened, I wasn't, aware of anything to do with energy or any of this. And being able to tap in, not even tap in is that's not even what I would call it, but just her looking at me, the way she looked at me was just her telling me, you'll be okay, you can do it, and just so much love and warmth. And I'm getting a little bit emotional, so there's still a little bit there that's maybe painful or that hasn't quite released yet. But I just have always remembered that look, and it was always so hard and so painful for me that she couldn't talk, that I couldn't have that verbal communication with her. And so last night, as I was falling asleep, I had this vision where I was in that moment, and it played out as it was. And then everyone else in the room disappeared. So it was just me and Grandma. And I just let everything pour out. And I just, if you listen to that previous podcast episode that I recorded live, meditation, you'll hear a little bit more in details about, I was apologizing to her. That episode and that memory, that previous one, had a lot to do with the abusive relationship that I was in, and she tried to kind of give me that tough love. And then, after she passed away, I've had these things, these energies within me of feeling upset that she saw me like that, and all of these different things. And so, I was apologizing to her. I was telling her that I felt guilty. I was scared. I felt it's not fair that she's leaving. She's dying, and I felt betrayed in a way that was happening, not by her necessarily, but just those emotions. And I just let it all pour out, and more even than I have than I know the words for. It was just everything came out. And I climbed up on the hospital bed beside her, and I laid my head on her shoulder, and I was crying, and she was hugging me. And one of the craziest things is that as everyone kind of disappeared from the room, so as that scene shifted and everyone else was gone and it was just us two, it was like her spirit, or whatever you want to call it, came down into her body, and she could move again. She could talk. She was bright. She was lit up. And so in that moment, of course, not physically the way that it happened, but in that moment, quantumly, so this is like on a different timeline now, we're shifting timelines here, is I was able to have that conversation, that verbal back and forth with her. Not that I need that, because I know that she's here with me all the time. I can talk to her, I can hear her, but it's on a different level than actually being able to have that conversation that I wanted to have, that I maybe wouldn't have even been brave enough to have back then if she could have talked, if we could have had that conversation. So this was such a beautiful meditation and a beautiful experience for me. Excuse me. And as I was sitting with that, and as that was kind of playing out in my mind's eye, as I was in quantum watching this, but also being there and feeling all of the stuff that was happening, I was sitting with that, and then I just felt a release, huge release. And quite often I feel those releases in my physical body, but not always. And this one was so obvious that even as I was in meditation and as I was almost kind of drifting off to sleep, because this was nighttime right before bedtime, and I was laying on my stomach and I was turned this way, and I kind of had my hands were kind of on my heart, and I just felt this huge, like, physical shift in my physical body. And I enjoy feeling that because I even though I trust what's happening in quantum, I do enjoy feeling a shift on the physical level. So it was like this whoosh, and it just like let go. And so that was really wonderful. And then I fell asleep, and I was dreaming crazy things last night. I don't even remember what, but I just remember that I was dreaming very vividly. Um, and then I woke up this morning and I went and had a bath right away. And I was kind of just tapping back into myself to see, okay, that was really wonderful. I loved that. And let's just see physically how I'm feeling this morning. And what I was able to tap into was like specifically in the stomach and up into the lungs, this feeling of lightness and this feeling as though something that has just been weighing so heavily had finally unlocked and released and let go. And even as I breathe this morning, and my body's fairly comfortable taking deep breaths, but even that has shifted, where I'm able to breathe so much more deeply into my belly, into my lungs. And the interesting thing is, for those of you who aren't aware, the lungs hold on to the emotions of grief and sadness. So it's like I had this huge release of grief last night, and this sadness and all of these unseen things that I've been struggling for so long to tap into and to actually let go of. So when I received a session or a reading last year, over a year ago now. Today's December 4th, 2020. And part of what came up was that I was in my abdomen area here, just underneath my right breast. There was an area that was kind of coming up to be addressed, and it had to do with grandma and a lot of the grief I was still holding on to, a lot of the emotions, a lot of just the energy and just all of the stuff that was still stuck in there, that was still sitting in that area, quote unquote, physically within my body. And I never really knew how to deal with that. I never really knew how to go about doing the work to actually address and release that. And I haven't tapped yet back into that area specifically, but I feel that when I do, it will have shifted. So that's a really exciting shift because, that would pop into my mind every now and then of, okay, I'm aware that this is there, but I have no idea how to actually work with it. And so even throughout this morning and even the recording of this video and this podcast, I feel myself just being able to breathe and it's like, now that this is actually released, I've been able to look back linearly in like on a timeline of the past years. So she's been passed away for about a year or 10 and a half years now. No. 13 and a half years, because my son is 13. That's weird why that came up as 10 and a half. But anyway, looking back over the years of how, even when I tried to do breath work or take deep breaths, how it always felt like there was something that was just like gently squeezing my stomach and my abdomen and up into my chest, so that I couldn't quite get there with a nice deep breath. And this morning, it's just like, as I have said, it's like this opening up of the belly and the abdomen and the chest, so into the lungs and even up into like the collarbones and up into the neck. It's like this like pulling the shoulders back and just that entire area opening up. So that's a really exciting physical shift. And at the end of that vision, after it had kind of wrapped up and things had finished, I had an image come through of my grandma just like playing. So healthy and bright and just like shining light and just like being playful. And then my inner child showed up and they were just playing together. So it was so beautiful. And I'm so grateful. So I think that this has been, even though it was kind of unintentional, one of the shifts that has kind of been percolating under the surface a little bit for such a long time, like 13 years worth, really. And, I am going to do an episode and or a video talking a little bit more about timelines where I explain that a little bit more. But this was a timeline shift. And what I mean by that is things happened in this physical reality a certain way. That's one timeline. And what happens when you go back, quote unquote, go back in time out in quantum and shift something like that, or you reprogram, or you restructure, or you envision essentially things happening differently, that's a timeline shift. So that puts you onto a new timeline. So now, as my present self, even though it didn't happen physically, I am on a new timeline now where I got to have that verbal conversation with her. I got to tell her how I was feeling. I got to hear how she was feeling. And so, what a gift.